We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network, hanging out with you on this Thursday. All right, Gunnar, let's start with this one. If you just popping on, by the way, Jalen Carter signed, sealed, and delivered 4 years, $21.8 million guaranteed. So the Eagles' first pick overall for them this past draft, number 9 overall, is locked in. All right, Rodney McLeod, who has been a free agent up until this point, signs a 1-year deal with the Cleveland Browns. So Rodney's still employed. I know Rodney still lives in this area. Some were hoping he would maybe come back to the Eagles. I didn't think that would have been the worst thing in the world either at that safety spot. But he is going to Cleveland. And one of those guys you wish nothing but the best because he's a class act. Mute it, Derek. You muted. Still muted.
Am I going to be doing this the whole show again?
I don't know.
But you know what? The class act part supersedes the athlete because he is one of the finest individuals you will ever come across who has played in the National Football League.
Yep.
He is always low-key. He is humble, always accessible, always says the right thing, never controversial. And I hope, I know when he left here was after he had that knee injury. He went to Indianapolis, had a good year. He wanted to come back to Philadelphia, just didn't work out. But I'm glad he's still fulfilling his desires to play football in the National Football League because I still think he has a lot to give to the game, both as a player and as a mentor to younger players who will eventually take his place. So good for him. Sorry he had to go to Cleveland, but I'm glad he's still a part of the game.
Yeah. It was I think he still gets some gas left in the tank. I think he'll do a nice job for them. I would have preferred, look, I don't know that he would have still been a starter here. Maybe he would have, but it would have been a nice safety net in case things didn't work out with, Terrell Edmonds or Blankenship. And I know, look, they may be able to plug in Sidney Brown, and we'll get into that in a minute. But, Eagles must have just felt like he didn't have enough left in the tank. I'm guessing. Yeah. I don't know ultimately. But yeah, he goes to Cleveland, and it's actually not a bad spot for him. Cleveland's going to be an interesting team, Derek, in that, if Deshaun Watson, who had a long time off from football, can start looking like the Houston Watson, that team could be dangerous.
I couldn't agree with you more. When you look at what they have at their disposal, he's got Nick Chubb to hand off to, who's always a 1,000-yard rusher. You look in one direction, you have Amari Cooper. You look at another direction, now you have Elijah Moore, who they traded for. And Donovan Peoples-Jones is a really good receiver. Your tight end is David Njoku. You've got a good offensive line. See, and we said this throughout last season, but they don't get enough credit for this. Cleveland has one of the best offensive lines in the National Football League.
Yeah.
And you look at how they run the ball. The only problem has been they haven't had any settling in their quarterback situation up until now. You look at what they have on defense. They got a lot of talent on defense. The backwater of the defense alone, Denzel Ward, Grant Delpit, Juan Thornhill, and Greg Newsome II.
Yeah.
That's not a bad collection of talent there, man.
Yeah.
And they've got Myles Garrett coming off the edge. So they've got the talent to be a dangerous team. You're right. No, I don't think anybody's going to pick them to win their division, but don't be surprised if somehow, some way they find a way to slip in the back door of the playoffs.
Yeah, no question. So yeah, the interesting move. Thought maybe the Eagles may take a run at him, but he ends up going there. All right. So speaking of that, we just mentioned Sidney Brown. If you look at the depth chart and you look at where some of the Eagles rookies project, and tell me if you think I'm wrong here, but if you look at their depth chart right now, and I'm talking about where you would fill these guys in, and granted, the depth charts that you're looking at when you look at them on like ESPN or the NFL.com, they're unofficial depth charts.
Right.
But right now, the Eagles' starting defensive tackles are Jordan Davis and Fletcher Cox. My guess is, come game 1, your starting defensive tackles are going to be Fletcher Cox and Jalen Carter.
I couldn't agree with you more. The Eagles are so excited to have this young man at their disposal. And I do think that will take some of the pressure off of Jordan Davis. I don't know if Jordan Davis is a 3-down D tackle, to be honest with you. He has a lot to prove. A lot of people are high on him, and rightfully so. You can't really judge him. I mean, you can't knock a player for having to go through injuries like he did. and just play sporadically like he did. There was a big question mark about whether or not, why did you only play him 10 plays in the Super Bowl? You know, nobody could really stop the run, but you couldn't get him on the field more, especially in that second half when they were, Kansas City is running up and down the field on you, but now he has a fresh start. And he's got one of his former teammates. So they'll be pushing each other. But I agree with you. By the time they kick off the regular season, I expect Jalen Carter to be putting his hand in the dirt alongside Fletcher.
I mean, watching him and talking to everybody, Derek, I haven't talked to one person who said to me, this guy should come off the field because he plays the run and the pass equally well.
Yes.
With Jordan right now, we're in a situation of you feel pretty good about him against the run, but I don't know what he's going to look like in the passing game.
I don't either.
So,
but you got to find out. You have to find out. At some point, you got to find out.
Exactly.
And they'll get a better determination, not even in OTAs in May and June. They'll get a better determination at training camp, especially when they start lining up against other teams. We don't know who they're scheduled to scrimmage against once or twice in the preseason, but and obviously he'll get a few reps in the preseason as well. So we'll find out more. But I think for what Jalen Carter brings to the table in overall athleticism, the ability to be disruptive, you unless he gets injured, you're not going to be able to keep him off the field. You can't.
Yeah, I agree. And then, all right, you go to Nolan Smith. My guess is he's technically in a backup role coming off the edge. Your starting edge guys, it just depends how you want to do this, but Sweat, and I would say Hassan Reddick, I think BG, and then Nolan Smith are your first guys, with Derek Barnett sort of, I think, having to almost prove himself, as weird as that sounds.
Yeah.
Because he's been here for a while, but I think that's kind of the way it goes. Now, here's the question I have. Are there going to be sets where you have Nolan Smith on one end and Hassan Reddick on the other end, or are you going to substitute each out for the other?
I think that's a very distinct possibility. It could be Hassan Reddick and Nolan. It could be Nolan and Brandon Graham. We've seen Brandon Graham and Hassan Reddick. I think it'll be a combination of the three in any given down and distance situation. If Nolan lives up to expectation, he's going to get his chance to show that speed and that ability off the edge, and to be disruptive. Especially in that NASCAR package when they go to 5-man fronts. Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, think about the speed they have coming off the edges. It's ridiculous right now, the way it looks on paper. So yes, I expect Nolan to be a significant part of that rotation. And obviously, as the season wears on, I think his numbers will increase in terms of percentages of snaps. Yeah. Now, there's a part of me that believes Derek Barnett may not even be here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he might not even make this roster this year. With the way this team's looking roster-wise now, because you go beyond a Barnett. They still have Patrick Johnson, Kyron Johnson. Young guys who the Eagles need to find out about, as well as they have to make more decisions after 2023. Derek Barnett is what he is.
Right.
Hopefully, as I've said time and time again, hopefully he's a more mature Barnett in terms of making less than the mental mistakes that he has been accustomed to making. But I'm not so sure he's going to be with this roster, to be honest.
Yeah, I hear you. Adam asks a question. I think it's an interesting one. Will the Eagles pursue the Ravens linebacker who was unhappy? That's Patrick Queen. Here's the problem. He's entering the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
The Eagles don't generally pay out linebackers, big time money. And he's just been okay down there in Baltimore. Yeah. He's not been terrible, but I'm not saying it's out of the question, but it would almost be a Kaiser White rental. I just don't see them re-upping him for big money.
Not unless they can find a way to restructure the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
That's the only way I can see it happening. If you go out and get a Patrick Queen, you should have kept TJ Edwards,
Right.
And they didn't do that. So Patrick Queen coming here, would he be a good addition to this defense? I think so. But there's a part of me that also says Baltimore is a very defensive-minded organization. If Baltimore has been waning on him, why? Obviously, we haven't seen enough of him in game films because we don't look at Baltimore as closely as we do this team here. But if Baltimore, very defensive minded, have been since the Ozzie Newsome tenure, is basically looking the other way, I need to know why. I need to know what is it that's been lacking in his game that has caused him to fall out of grace with that organization. You know how it is. We hear a name. Oh, you got to get him. You got to get him. You got to have. No, it's not the case. It depends on how he fits in your scheme. And I don't know if he would fit this scheme. Only Matt Patricia and Sean Desai would know that.
Yeah, absolutely. I wonder, like, are we ever hearing from Sean Desai? Are we ever hearing from Brian Johnson?
Why is that?
Well, I guess you probably wanted to get through the draft. I get that. It should be in the next week or so, you would think.
Well, I tell you, customarily what the Eagles do in usually in May or early June is they make all the coaches available at a sit-down session in the NovaCare bubble. They strategically have, offensive coaches at one point of the day, and then a defensive coach and they space them out at a round table so the media has good access to get to whoever they want to go to. I think that's probably going to be the first time that Desai speaks to the media.
Right. Could be. Yeah, could be.
Yeah.
Makes sense. All right. So beyond those two guys, the first rounders, you look at the offensive line, it feels like it's Juergen's job to lose that guard spot, that right guard spot. But, I don't know. I don't know for sure. I think that if Steen comes in here and really crushes it, I think he has a shot. If worst case, he becomes the swing man who can play tackle or guard for you.
Yeah.
Worst case, he's the break glass in case of emergency guy.
Think about how quick maybe Stoutland can coach him up. I mean, the dude's a big body, 6'6". You look at, except for Jason Kelsey, everybody is 6'5" or bigger on that team. Your left tackle 6'8", your right tackle 6'6". He would be 6'6".
Yeah,
Landon Diggers is 6'5".
Yeah, these guys are tanks.
They're tanks, man. But you're right. And Juergens is only 6'3". But that has nothing to do with his ability. And obviously he has a year advance on a Steen.
Mm-hmm.
But Stoutland can't wait to get his hands on this guy and coach him up to see what he is and what he isn't. We sit here today and we assume that Juergens is the odds-on favorite to win that position. We'll see at the end of camp. Stoutland looks at things differently than we do on the outside looking in. And he has a lot of clout and a lot of say in terms of who lines up in the first five. So it's going to be interesting to see what he determines by the end of training camp.
No question. All right, then you look at Sidney Brown, and we actually talked about this a good amount yesterday, but if you look at the way the safety depth chart is set up, your starters right now, strong safety is Terrell Edmonds, your free safety is Reed Blankenship. Right now, Kayvon Wallace backs up Edmonds at the strong spot, and Sidney Brown is listed as your number 2 for the free safety spot. So that's there for the taking, I think, with Sidney Brown for sure. Blankenship's got the jump on him because he was here.
Yeah.
Blankenship knows the system a little bit better, but by all accounts, Brown's a pretty quick study. That's going to be one. I like some competition in camp, and I think that's going to be one to keep your eye on here.
In no way, shape, or form am I down on Reed Blankenship. I thought he showed flashes of being a really good safety, and of course, he made some young mistakes, as the Sidney Brown will make as he continues on his maiden voyage in the NFL. I just think with the athleticism, the speed, the versatility of a Sidney Brown, he may not start the season as a starter, but I could see somewhere along the line before the season's over, he takes over for Blankenship to go along with Terrell Edmonds. I just think his physical attributes, his ability to read and break on a ball is much better than Reed Blankenship's. He just has to learn the technique at the NFL level and learn to look at the different schemes at the NFL level compared to where he did in the Big Ten. Let's face it, for the most part, the Big Ten is a power football conference.
Yeah.
The only team that exceeds that on a consistent basis is Ohio State in terms of putting the ball up as they run the ball. For the most part, all the other teams want to run the ball first and pound you between the tackles and then set up the pass. So he's going to have to make that adjustment in terms of knowing what to decipher when guys come out in certain formations. Once he gets up to speed, I think he's going to significantly push Reed Blankenship for that spot.
Yeah, makes sense. The other one that I think is one to keep your eye on too is Keely Ringo. And if you look at again, go back to the depth chart here at safety, it's obvious who the starters are. Bradbury left side, Slay right side. Right now, Nolan Smith is listed as Keely Ringo is listed right now as the third stringer behind Slay and Greedy Williams. Mm-hmm. So I think there's ample opportunity there. And, we know Avante is going to play in the slot. We know that behind him, it's Josh Jobe, Mario Goodrich, Josiah Scott is still here, but there's room to at least get to the number 2 guy for Ringo.
Well, in Ringo's case, it's going to have to be about patience. He's not going to get on the field as much as he wants. Greedy Williams is an accomplished player. He's a really good player. Josh Jobe backing up Avante Maddox has shown that he can play at times. He can run. He's not afraid of contact. He's physical. He does make mistakes, yes, but Keely's going to have to really, really do something special to break that ice block. And I don't know if he can early on. I think they're going to get him on the field, obviously, to get him some reps, but I think he's going to be more of situational. He might get in 5, 10, 12% of the snaps if he's lucky in his rookie year.
Well, I agree with you. I think we were talking to EJ Smith yesterday, and I thought he made a really interesting point. And if you didn't get a chance to see it, you're going to go back and check it out at jakibsports.com. But, he was a running back in high school. He got to Georgia, and they just thought with his size, the height and the speed, he just set up to be a defensive back.
Yep.
And then he hurt his pec his freshman year. So he hasn't played a ton of corner. He's learning still the position. I think it's a great year to just indoctrinate him into what the Eagles do and just let him learn for a season.
Absolutely. So take the same approach you did with Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis. There's no pressure on him to play X amount of snaps. He's got a great DB room to sit back, learn, absorb, ask an abundance of questions. And I've said this before. Players always have told me they learn more from teammates than they do coaches.
Right.
And he's got a wealth of highly decorated talent in front of him to learn the position and to learn the little nuances to look for in certain situations. And it's a great position for him to be in terms of gradually coming along instead of being rushed into the fire.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Lastly, and this is not so much a draft pick, it's the trade. Swift or Penny? Now, good backups, good guys behind them, and Boston Scott and Gainwell, we know that. But when it comes to the bulk of the carries, Derek, is there going to be – I use the word workhorse, but in this offense, there isn't anybody who's a traditional workhorse. But who's going to get the bulk of the snaps, you think, if both are healthy?
Well, before we heard of a Penny or Swift wearing an Eagles uniform, I had said Gainwell was going to be the lead back. I think now it's going to be Swift.
Okay.
Swift is just too electric not to get. And again, he may get no more than 15 or 17 touches as a Miles Sanders did. Mm-hmm. I just think in open space, once he slips through the initial line of contact, this dude is electric. A great array of moves, has a nice gear. The biggest problem, just like with Penny, how long can you keep him healthy? He's missed 3 games every year he's been in the league.
Yep.
I would line him up a lot in the slot also. I would get him in a mismatch because he has the moves and the quickness to get away from coverage, whether it's a linebacker or a safety. He has good hands, good speed, good agility. He's a tough runner. He's not one of these you can just bring him down with one-arm tackles. So I think he emerges right now as the lead back. I don't like to use feature back. I'll just say lead back.
Yeah, and look, I think that both of these guys are uber talented. It's all just been about health. I mean, you look at the yards per carry for Penny, it's unbelievable. Yep. And then, same thing with Swift, and Swift's receiving numbers are just awesome. And these guys are going to be with a better quarterback. I know there's receivers here that are going to need their touches too, which, could maybe cut into the amount of passes they're getting. But boy, man, I just think about the possibilities with these guys. You're really athletic at that position too. With both of those two. And you have, Scott or Penny that seem to have a nose for the end zone. The other great thing about this team, Derek, is in short yardage.
Yes.
Between what Hurts is able to do and what Scott and Gainwell are able to do.
And Scott And Penny, Penny is a power back also. He's strong. He's strong lower body strength. You have like 5 different options now when you get inside short yardage situations or goal line situations. That's going to drive coordinators and defensive players nuts because you have no idea what's coming. You have no idea.
No.
Is Hurts keeping the ball? Are you going to pitch it to a quick guy like Swift? Are you going to pound him with Penny or Gainwell? Man,
I got to imagine like Sirianni and Johnson and they're just drooling thinking about this.
Yeah.
And Jalen just understanding things that much better with another year under his belt, still only 24 years old. That's the thing too. We don't take into account enough is just how much better is he going to get? Think about even all the greats, how much better Brady was from 24 years old to 28 years old or Marino or more the new school guys, how much better Mahomes was is now than he was 3 years ago. It's going to be crazy. They should score a lot of points.
Look at the youth movement at the skill position period for this team. Hurts is only 24. Swift is still a young guy. Gainwell's a young guy. AJ Brown's a young guy still. Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, all still young guys in what is deemed as one of the most explosive and dangerous offenses in the National Football League.
Right.
That's unbelievable what they have at their disposal right now.
Yeah, should be interesting. All right, we'll come back. We're going to do NFL talk at 2:00, but we're going to come back. We'll do a little bit more Sixers. Rich Hoffman Jr. from The Athletic is going to join us. Rich will give us his impressions of what went down last night in Game 2, what adjustments need to be made for Game 3. We'll pose the question that Derek asked a little bit earlier. Are they better off without Embiid? So we'll talk about all those kind of things. When we come back, don't go anywhere. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Time for me to tell you about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because knowing who to trust with your finances is of the utmost importance. And I didn't have that right person for a while. I have them now, and it's Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group. Whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review, you might have a small business, you're trying to get your employee benefits off the ground. Whatever it is, Jim can be a resource for you. I know personally I've entrusted my IRAs, my 401k rollovers with Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. The other thing I like the most is he is always around to answer a question, whether it's via email, on the cell, what are we doing here? What's happening here? Why did this dip? Why is that going up? What's a good trend? You name it, Jim can help you with it. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. Or you can email him as well, Murray, Murray.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.com.